Because here's the reality, and this is really worth thinking about. In the era of answer engines, if you're not the answer, you're invisible. Hello, and welcome back to the Health Tech Marketing Show. I'm Adam Turinas, CEO of Health Launchpad. And if you're new here, thanks for joining us. And for those of you who've been with us for a while, I'm so grateful to you for your support. Quite a few of you out there these days. And I appreciate you sticking with us on this journey. I really hope that we're helping you think through some of the more challenging aspects of marketing in the wonderful world of healthcare technology. I also want to give a big thank you to our sponsors, the great people at HIMSS who have supported us for 5 years now, I think, with this podcast. And also to our recently added sponsors, Carol and Roberta. Thank you. What you do at Healthcare Now Radio is just wonderful. I'm so grateful to you for your support. Well, today we're going to dive into something that's kind of bugging me for a couple of weeks. You know, that Health Launchpad we're knee deep in AI transformation, both for ourselves, but also increasingly in the work that we're doing with our clients. And we're seeing some interesting patterns, some exciting, some concerning. And I want to share what we're learning because I think it could change how you think about your digital marketing strategy, particularly when it comes to SEO. So a couple of stories. I was at this conference in Cleveland, the MACON conference, the Marketing AI conference, which was truly amazing. And I was having a nice chat with a guy from an SEO agency. And I said to him that we're spending a lot of time on the whole area of answer engines and generative GEO and AEO. We call it AIO, but whatever. And he said that in his view, that it's not as big a deal as everybody thinks it is. And that it was really just a sort of a 10% incremental change on what you need to do versus regular SEO. So in his view, not as big a deal as we all think it is. I also then that same week saw a post on LinkedIn from Drew Neisser. Drew Neisser is the head of CMO Huddles and longtime CEO of Renegade Marketing, a great B2B marketing agency. And this is the way his post started. And it was a quote from a CMO of a $250 million SaaS company. And what this woman said was, I think AEO and GEO are a load of crap. If you follow SEO best practices, you'll be fine. And in Drew's own words, after I picked my jaw off the floor, I thought, could she actually be right? And guess what? I'm thinking the same question because I get where she's coming from. And if I'm honest, over the last couple of years, we've all been hit with so many acronyms. It's been crazy in the crypto conference. There's AEO, there's GEO, there's LLMs, AIO. It goes on and on. And it kind of feels like being a consultant that we might be being accused of billing by the buzzword. But I just wonder if what's going on here is actually much more different than these two experts, and they're professionals and they're very smart people, two people. I just wonder if they're right, because what if this isn't just SEO 2.0? What if this is actually something that requires a different playbook? And that's what we're going to be unpacking today. And what I hope is by the end of this episode, you'll either be thinking that, I'm wrong, I'm completely nuts, or you'll start to think about your digital strategy in a different way. So let's dive in. Here's the reality. And you probably have seen this already. I mean, you know this already anyway, is that SEO, it's the cornerstone of digital marketing, has been for 2 decades. And you know the drill, right? You have to optimize your site. You have to create content that the search engines will find. You need to build high quality backlinks. And you need to hope that the Google algorithm will smile on your website and your content favorably and rank you highly and put you up in the top, hopefully top 3 links in whatever the search term is that you're trying to optimize for. But it feels to us like the landscape is shifting. If you're not feeling it too, I think you probably will be soon too. And I'll tell you what we've experienced. And I've shared this before, so apologies if you've heard this story. But Health Launchpad, our website, grew 10% month on month for 4 years straight through 2024. In fact, for longer than 4 years straight. And 65 to 80% of that growth was driven from SEO. Since 2024, that stopped. And we've seen a precipitous decline in SEO-driven growth. Now, SEO accounts for less than 40% of our traffic. It seems to have plateaued off around, I think, 38%, I think was the last count. But the traffic is not, well, it's not growing anymore, or hasn't been until recently. It seems to be picking up again, actually. The drop-off in SEO traffic has actually been made up for by an increase in referral traffic and an increase in direct traffic. And based on our analysis, that is attributed to traffic coming from answer engines and the generative AI engines like ChatGPT, Grok and Claude and Perplexity. And we can see that. We can actually see those referral links. And what this means is that we are moving into what many are calling a zero-click world, where so essentially zero-click searches are rising. And so what's going on here is with AI overviews, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and even Copilot, all of these tools, users are getting answers, not links. And that's a fundamental difference, right? Think about that for a second. Answers, not links. So the new gatekeepers aren't the search engines anymore. They're answer engines. And these guys, these answer engines, they don't crawl and rank the way that search engines do. They read, they interpret, and they decide on what's worth repeating in the answer that they generate for whoever's asking the question. And you know what this means is that SEO optimizes for an index, AEO optimizes for an inference engine. And that's not a 10% tweak, folks. That feels like a completely new game entirely. So let's be fair here. And I want to sort of try and do justice to the skeptics' point of view, because I respect that, honestly, they've probably forgotten more about SEO than I'll ever know. And in their words, a lot of the AEO best practices sound familiar. So let me go through those. So first of all, you should have structured data. Check that on SEO. You should have FAQs. Yep, that's an SEO best practice. You should make your content clear and user-friendly. Definitely an SEO best practice. And for the love of Google, you should stop gating everything. I mean, that's something that is definitely an SEO best practice. So it all sounds like SEO 101, right? And so I can see why SEO purists might roll their eyes and saying, you see, it's really just good old SEO, just with a new hat on. But here's the catch, and this is important. Overlapping tactics doesn't necessarily mean an overlapping strategy. Let me say that again. Overlapping tactics doesn't mean overlapping strategy. So SEO is about being ranked. AEO or AIO is about being retrieved. And that's quite a big difference. And it's quite a crucial thing to get your head around. So in SEO, you're being optimized for a list. You want to be number one or at least on page one of the list. In AEO, you're optimizing to be the answer to be cited as fact, not just found as content. It's a really fundamental shift in how we think about visibility. So, and this is where it gets real. And this is something where I think I think it shall get your attention because it's certainly got mine. In his post, Drew Neisser said that in conversation with members of the CMO Huddles community, which is a community of really high profile chief marketing officers in business to business marketing, they're really smart, experienced people. They reported something kind of wild. LLM generated traffic converts 4 to 6 times higher than Google traffic. Just let that sink in a moment. 4 to 6 times higher. And by the way, we're starting to see something similar, which is that, again, traffic is flat, SEO traffic is down. We believe that a lot of the gap is being made up by traffic coming from the generative AI engines. Our leads are up, and a lot of the inbound is of a much higher quality. Now, what we think is going on here is that the visitors aren't tire quick kickers. They're people who've already been convinced on AI overviews or on ChatGPT that you are credible enough to be recommended. Really different, right? Which is essentially an AI engine is recommending you rather than what Google does, which is sends a link because you rank highly. The AI has essentially pre-qualified buyers for you, and maybe they're ready to shortlist you. And if you're not tracking that traffic, and more importantly, if you're not optimizing for it, you might be leaving serious money on the table. So this is why this is a priority. It's certainly not about vanity metrics. It's not about clicks. It's not about impressions. It's not even about rankings. It's about whether your brand even exists in the digital ecosystem. Is it trusted? And that's actually worth being, that's something that should keep us all up at night, right? Because if we're not showing up in the LLMs and our competitors are, they're actually at a huge advantage. It's actually, frankly, I think an even bigger deal than not being able to displace that competitor who's managed to secure the number one spot on Google. Now, a counterpoint. This is quite interesting. It took me a while to get my head around it. In fact, I had to actually have a bit of a Q&A back and forth with ChatGPT to make sure I really understood this. But let me try and explain it. So there's a company called Yext, digital marketing powerhouse. I'm sure you've heard about them. They dropped a bit of a grenade into the conversation. They analyzed 6.8 million citations across ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity. And here's what they find. They found that 86% of those citations come from brand-owned resources. That means your website, listings, your own content. Reddit, forums, and user-generated content, just 2% of the citations. Just 2%. Honestly, I'm still struggling to get my head around that. And if you're an SEO person and you're in that camp of the sort of the AEO skeptic, you might think, okay, see, told you, right? SEO just works fine. But just think about this a second. If 86% of the citations come from owned content, that means that the game is about control and clarity. It's not about backlinks. And, honestly, who cares about those anymore? It's about how your content is structured, how it's labeled, and how it's interpreted by AI systems. And it's about how readable your content is to machines, not crawlers, inference engines. And that's what AEO really is about. It's the art of making your content machine trustworthy. Okay, so let's talk about the part that gives us all a bit of a migraine, which is measurement. So tracking AEO impact right now is like trying to measure fog with a ruler. I'm not kidding. It's really, really hard because every LLM is unique. GA4 doesn't know how to deal with it. Half of the traffic coming from the answer engines and the generative AI engines seems to be either lumped into direct, and the other half is lumped into referrals. And, that's the best that we've got right now. There are some tools out there that we've seen that will help you actually track those sources. The other thing is that every LLM query is unique. It's not about short key phrases anymore, because the average prompt length, the question that people are putting into these answer engines, is something like 23 words. And if you change one word, you get a totally engine. So how do you know if you rank in quotes? It just really doesn't matter, because you don't. I mean, there's no way of knowing how you're going to rank for that. So the old SEO KPIs of rankings, clicks, and click-through may be obsolete, or if nothing else, their days are numbered. And so we're starting to talk about new metrics. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still trying to figure it out. But the sorts of things that we're talking about now is things like retrieval frequency. So how often you're cited in AI answers. And then answer share, your brand's visibility across queries. And then citation authority. So are you the trusted source, or are you just filler text? And it's messy. It's early. I'm not sure how accurate a lot of the tools are. And it's giving me a headache. But here's what's kind of cool about it, was that if you're one of the first in your category to figure this out and to master it, you are going to get a huge leg up on your competition. We're seeing posts that we're writing that are designed to be valuable to humans, but frankly designed to be optimized for the answer engines, show up within a matter of weeks, and it's driving traffic back to our website. Now, let's be clear about something. Hedging on AEO right now is totally rational. I get it. It's hard to measure. It's experimental. And a lot of what are considered best practices in this kind of really new field overlap with what we should be doing anyway. But that doesn't mean you should ignore it, not by a long short. And here's what hedging smartly looks like. And this is what we're advising our client is, number one, build deep Q&As into your site, because it helps both humans and the LLMs love it as well. Be transparent about pricing and competitors, because if you don't, the model will get that data somewhere else. And trust me, you want to control that narrative. Ungate your best content. I know it hurts, but LLMs can't fill out a form. They just can't do that yet. And then invest in schema and structured data, because that's literally how AI reads. It's like putting up signs in a language they understand. And this is the new hygiene of digital visibility. So again, think about it this way. SEO writes for crawlers, AEO writes for language models and the humans that they influence. All right. Before we wrap up, I want to try and summarize this in 4 takeaways. And so if you remember kind of nothing else, maybe remember these things. I know I blathered on for quite a bit here. So takeaway number 1 is, we don't think this is SEO 2.0. We might be wrong about this. It's just the way that we see things right now. We don't think that AEO is an evolution of SEO. We think it's a fundamental shift from optimizing for ranking algorithms to optimizing for inference engines. We're moving from being found to being understood and trusted. Takeaway number 2, the business case is already clear. If those guys at CMO Huddles are right, LLM traffic converts 4 to 6 times higher than traditional search traffic. That's real money. And if you're not tracking and optimizing for AI-driven traffic, you're leaving revenue on the table. Again, even if I'm wrong about my view on whether this is a completely fundamentally different thing, you have to give it attention. You have to make it a priority. Takeaway number 3, control your narrative. With 86% of AI citations coming from brand-owned resources, you have more control than you think. But it requires restructuring your content, restructuring it for machine interpretation, not just human readability. That's what we're doing with the posts that we're creating, like how-tos and FAQs. The last takeaway is start now, even if it's messy. Yes, measurement is hard and imprecise. Yes, best practices are still emerging. But the companies who figure it out now will have a massive competitive advantage. Don't wait for perfect metrics. Start with the basics and start iterating. So is AEO just SEO with a new coat to paint? I don't think so. Is it SEO turned inside out? Possibly. So SEO makes us think like search engines. AEO forces us to think like AI systems, how they read, how they relate, and how they reason. And if you're a marketer today, and especially if you're in health tech marketing, where the stakes are high and the buyers are sophisticated, sales take forever, this isn't about chasing the next acronym. It's about future-proofing how your brand is found, how your brand is trusted, and how your brand is chosen. Because here's the reality, and this is really worth thinking about. In the era of answer engines, if you're not the answer, you're invisible. So if this episode has got you thinking, and I hope it did, share it with another marketer. And if you like this episode and it's the first time you're listening to it, please subscribe. You can give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe on YouTube, or you can subscribe on whatever your favorite podcast app is. Also, if you want to chat about this stuff, and I mean, really dig into it, you can book a call with me. We have developed a way to audit and optimize your site for the answer engines. There's a link down below. So until next time, I'm Adam Chirinos. Thanks for listening to the Health Tech Marketing Show. And remember, in a world of infinite content, be the answer, not just another search result. Talk to you soon.